Today is a good day. This will be the best gaming PC I've ever put together here on this channel, and these are the major components we have to play with. The heart of this build is a Ryzen 7 5800X installed on a high-end Aorus B550 motherboard. Paradoxically, I decided not to water cool it and instead use this massive single tower Noctua cooler that came from an i9 9900K build. The nice thing about Noctua coolers is that they probably have the best track record of supporting their products, and all I had to do was go online and order an AM4 mounting kit that came packaged in a nice bespoke box next day from Amazon. And it's a lot easier to install it now, as when the motherboard is in the PC it gets a bit fiddly. Before we can install the actual cooler on there, we need first to remove the M.2 heatsink from the top slot that goes directly to the CPU and install this 1TB Western Digital SN570 NVMe PCIe 3.0 SSD. Now, I steer clear of DRAM-less SSDs for a long time, but when this went on sale, I went online and read some reviews which convinced me to take the plunge. I can wholeheartedly say that I am glad I did. The SLC cache plus RAM provisioning being excellent at emulating the functionality of on-package DRAM. I can go so far as to say that unless you look at real edge cases such as transferring files larger than 50 GB, then this is functionality identical in day-to-day usage to my much more expensive PCIe Gen 4 Force MP600. There is simply no difference in game loading times that I can detect without a very precise stopwatch, and even then I'm guessing it's gonna be a bit of a chore. Endurance is also good enough at 600 TB written, which unless you are doing something stupid like chia mining, it's plentiful. By the time direct storage becomes a thing on PCs, this machine will most likely be too old to take advantage of it anyways. I spent a lot more than I usually do talking about storage, but this really good inexpensive drive has completely recalibrated my expectations. It's finally time to squirt some thermal paste onto the CPU and install that big cooler. The retention mechanism is really easy to work with, and unlike a lot of other coolers, it feels super secure. The two RAM stacks go in. I actually have a separate video about this particular RAM kit that I will link in the top right hand corner and also in the description if you are interested. The TLDR is that they are 3200 Mbps running at 1.2 volts with a ton of overclocking headroom. Out of the box I will set them to work at 3600 Mbps because otherwise it would be a great waste. And in the case everything goes, this is a Corsair 275R airflow that I've pre-installed 2 Corsair and 1 Antec ARGB fans onto the front and 1 NZXT fan as the exhaust. This is one of the cases that I actually don't hate because it's got a lot of features in a relatively compact mid-tower form factor on top of being very well built. For instance, it's chock full of 2.5-inch mounting spaces, and at the back I already installed a 500GB hard drive, and I might even throw in another 1TB one just because. These are as usual freebies because I can't be asked to worry about mechanical drives. Power supply on the other hand, well, this is rather special. It's an 850 watt, slightly overkill, slightly silly RGB unit from Thermaltake that is built like a tank. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for installing it in what looks like an upside down position, but this case actually supports that, so you can admire the RGB. Don't worry though, there is plenty of space between the GPU and the PSU, so they won't really interfere with each other. On the other hand, it's also really easy to flip because it's fully modular, so you just, take out the cables without needing to thread them out of the case. And now for the main event, the RTX 3080 Founders Edition. This is the original version with 10GB of VRAM. This is a very special card to me, not least because I woke up at 3 AM multiple times until I managed to snag one, but because it's been my main gaming GPU for the last 2 years. I have previously changed the thermal pads on this card with excellent jellied ones that won't leak silicone oil everywhere, and they will definitely outlast the card itself. The video of me doing that is actually the most popular on my channel. And after a bit of fumbling about with the cables, the build is almost done. All that is left is to turn it on and hope for the best. And would you look at that, everything is working as expected. The reason you can't see the PSU RGB is because it needs configuring in Windows, but I assure you it does work. Let's have a quick peek at some pictures and I shall see you in the benchmarking section. thought about how to benchmark this PC long and hard, and the result is that most likely whoever is interested in this PC will either at 4K or high refresh rate 1440p. The chances of pairing this rig with a 1080p monitor is, well, slim to say the least, unless you are aiming for ridiculous 340Hz plus competitive gaming, but I find that rather unlikely. Thus I decided to run all the benchmarks at 4K and target 60 FPS because this is the resolution I've been playing at over for the last 4 years or so, with the occasional drop to 1440p 120Hz where appropriate. The first benchmark we'll be taking a look at today is Heaven, which came out at a time when 4K wasn't even a thing. Yes, it's that ridiculously old. Despite this, the 3080 only managed 100.7 FPS when pushing it at 4K. This less than stellar result was somewhat expected, as Heaven doesn't scale particularly well above 1440p, where it gets over double at 240 FPS using the exact same settings. Superposition is next, and it's a much newer benchmark that usually halves the score, but this time it didn't. In fact, it posted an almost identical result at 106.07 FPS on average. The reason I suspect is that Superposition is actually built with 4K in mind, so it doesn't have any weirdness above 2K. League at max settings looks and runs very well with 278 FPS on average in the opening match, and this pretty much sums up the performance when it comes to esports. You will have an amazing time without much compromise, if any at all. Even if you're pairing this with something extremely high-end like an Odyssey Neo 4K 240Hz monitor or similar, you won't really have any issues, as you're going to be over the monitor's native refresh rate 99% of the time. Fortnite next, and here I had a lot of trouble with the new Unreal Engine 5.1 update. I tried to change any settings, and I mean anything at all, it would automatically turn off Lumen and Nanite, which is Epic's new sort of RTX infused rendering. I must admit, I don't hate it at all, but the max 60 FPS frame lock is a bit off-putting, especially in a fast-paced online game such as this one. I'm expecting patches that will fix this borderline broken experience, but within the confines of today's test, the system did really well sticking to 60 FPS. While in the air there were some minor excursions towards 57 FPS and a few times randomly on the ground, again not going below 57 FPS, I guess I would not have noticed them unless I looked at the OSD. I'm sure this can do a lot better once settings are tweakable, and the new rendering technologies do look very good. I haven't gotten my head around how they do everything, as hardware ray tracing is off and trying to turn it on disables Lumen, and as far as I can tell from Epic's rather poor documentation, turning on hardware ray tracing should boost performance but not necessarily fidelity. So we're going to just have to keep a close eye on this tech, because it seems to offer ray trace visuals with or without dedicated accelerating hardware. After the mess that was Fortnite, something refreshingly simple: Horizon Zero Dawn. After 2 years from its initial release on PC, it came out even early in 2017 on consoles. This title finally got support for FSR and DLSS, and it is so much better for it. In the benchmark we got 114 FPS on average, and that is a sort of worst case scenario. During normal gameplay it would be a lot higher. No doubt about it, this game looks amazing even today, almost 6 years after its initial release. Just wish Sony would hurry up and release Forbidden West for PC. If history is any indication, it would probably be sometime in 2025. Assassin's Creed Valhalla at 4K Ultra without any upscaling posts an impressive 70 FPS. Not much more there is to say about this one. Recently this game has received a flurry of updates that make this a possibility. When I wanted to play it first came out, I was struggling in the mid-50s. The reason for this immense uptick in performance is that the Anvil engine is very old and clunky, which makes it very difficult for the devs to optimize it quickly. Thankfully Ubisoft is a massive corporation with lots of resources, so they do get there in the end, just before they announce the final DLC and a slew of new games in development. Talk about being really late to the party. For this and a whole host of other reasons, I still haven't decided if I want to play it or not, and as much as I loved Odyssey, I really can't connect with this one. Maybe with Assassin's Creed Mirage going back to the series' roots when it launches in March 2023, Assassin's Creed will be exciting again. Farcry at 4K ultra quality with FSR quality is, well, it's annoying to be frank, because it's most likely CPU limited in places. This is through no fault of the excellent CPU in this machine, but because, well, again, it's Ubisoft and their inexplicably quirky engines. Far Cry series is notorious for being CPU single core and frequency bound, but I should not complain that much because 87 FPS on average, this game feels amazing to play, and for the visuals it has on offer, it's really not that demanding on the hardware, even with ray tracing enabled. Not that I can spot it when it's on or off without a frame counter, that's how subtle the effect is. Also of note, I did not have the HD textures pack in this run because of my test drive space limitation. Higher resolution textures don't really affect the frame rate that much, unless you happen to go over the VRAM limitation, that is. It's gone at 4K using the very high and also very stupid preset, runs very well. Even excellent, I would say. Remember, I'm targeting 4K 60Hz here. Going 4K high refresh rate isn't really on the cards, pun intended, for the 30 series. If you want to be able to play consistently at over 120Hz at 4K, you will need to upgrade to 40 series or the 7900 XTX. Even for non-RTX titles such as this one. Having played this game from start to finish on this 3080, I can safely say that if you get steamrolled by a horde, the issue is with your skill level and not with any imagined game lag, because there isn't any. In control with max settings and DLSS enabled, you'll get around 68 FPS on average depending on the scene. This game is probably the best showcase for RTX, making a massive difference for the experience, being woven in instead of tacked on as an afterthought. Here it is natively running at 1440p and getting upscaled by DLSS to 4K, and it looks absolutely incredible even after a few years. I wish I had this card when the game first came out, as I originally played it on the 2080 Ti, and to get close to 60 FPS you had to set the base resolution to Full HD instead of 2K, and with DLSS 1.0 really struggling in the background to deliver playable frame rates and decent visuals at the same time. In Cyberpunk, using the 4K Ultra RT preset and DLSS, we get a very playable 54 FPS on average. But though this is with the absolute best visuals this game has on offer, so it's not bad going at all. I should mention that this does not include the yet to be released RTX Overdrive set of features. As it is a single player game, I don't think it's much of a drawback that you can't really take advantage of a high refresh rate monitor. For me, the visuals here are far more important. I will probably be stopping to admire a puddle in the middle of a firefight than trying desperately to frag an opponent. The Witcher 3's next gen update is a bit broken. I used the RT Ultra Plus preset with DLSS set to quality, and the results were, well, they were terrible. Sure that performance patches will come thick and fast, because this is really not acceptable from CD Projekt Red, having some really potent flashbacks to when Cyberpunk first launched. You would think the developers would have learned something from that misfire. Alas, no, it seems that the allure of getting this out before Christmas has hit again, and it did not stick the landing. Sure, you can brute force it with the 4090 to get the 60 FPS with DLSS we are targeting, and then turn on DLSS frame generation on, but that literally works in one instance only. Not to mention the 4090 costs more than this entire machine. Enter 1440p. For the moment, until the absolutely abysmal RT performance is fixed, if you want to play this with all the bells and whistles enabled, this is the way to do it. So because I captured this using Shadowplay, you should add 2 or 3 FPS extra due to the encoding task. On a side note, this looks amazing compared to my craptastic capture cards. Look at them side by side. The way to achieve roughly the same result is to drop down the DLSS quality setting to balance, but I turned down the resolution to make a point. Be willing to bet the next round in a busy pub that in 3-4 months that 29 FPS on average at 4K will automagically turn into 40 FPS or so. As things stand today, the only game that calls for dropping the resolution on this machine is a hot mess of a patched 7-year-old game. If that's not irony on a stick, I don't know what is. And that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next one.